So I just wanted to make this video, have all these books that have to do with the American founding, right? As far as the new covenantal understanding of the country, which I believe is necessary for its salvation. Understanding it all from like the Constitution, Declaration, just the identity of the nation being grounded in the new covenant reality, right? Like the way I see that America as the new covenant nation has more to do with the essence of its founding. And so that's why I have all these books here, because I just wanted to make a quick video, just kind of just like skimming through them, I guess, like not reading through all of them, not reading through all of them because obviously it'd take too long. I just wanted to, show you these books that I have, and if you're interested, you can, purchase them yourself or so, because it's really more about defending the I would say the American Orthodoxy, right? The American correct understanding or so, the right interpretation of the country, like how it doesn't make sense, and secularism, right? Things like that. And so that's why I wanted to show you these books to kind of give you the idea of what I'm saying. Like the first one is The Bible in American Law and Politics. This is a reference guide by John R. Vile. It's pretty good. It has a lot of references to the laws in America and stuff. It says, while scholars increasingly recognize the importance of religion throughout American history, the Bible in American Law and Politics is the first A to Z reference book to focus on the key role that the Bible has played in American public life. And so there's a lot of them. This one's the Christian History of the American Revolution. This is from Berna Hall. It's a big book. And this is another one from the same author. The Christian History of the Constitution of the United States of America. It's just as big. And this one is America's Founding Fathers and the Bible. A Select Study of America's Christian Origins by Stephen A. Flick. Contrary to the contemporary mantra that America was birthed as a secular nation, the historical evidence demonstrates that America was founded by Christians who wished to enjoy the liberty to freely express their Christian faith. It just says that Christians have forgotten and neglected the Christian heritage bequeathed to them by the American founding fathers, and have followed secularists to disparage and deny what was given to them at such a great price. So, yeah, because that's what I'm saying. Like, it's Christian heritage is what I'm talking about. That that would be it's new covenant heritage, right? Because I see the Christian people as the new covenant of people, new covenantal people, right? That's what Christian people are, like the body of Christ. So it's like God with his body established a nation, right? His Christian people. It's like a work of his hands, like his hand of providence and stuff as well. It says also that two founding fathers manipulated by secularists to advance the false argument of an irreligious American origin are Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson. In this second edition, their unorthodox opinions are considered and placed within the context of their contribution to America's Christian origin. Readers will learn why these founding fathers cannot be used as advocates of irreligion with regard to America's origin. Yeah, because I would agree that separation is necessary for true religion, right? That's why they continued in their own way right after like the so-called separation. The national proclamation, or the proclamations and Thanksgiving and prayers and things like that, and favoring the Christian morality and religion because of Jesus, right? Who is venerated by all of these founders of America. And so they certainly favored true religion, which was interchangeable with the religion of Jesus, which is why the Christian religion, like, was basically the main, I would say is the established religion because of that. And this was like an old book written in 1815 or 1889. I thought it was very interesting. It's from George Searle. It's the American Republic. Yeah, the American Republic and Human Liberty Foreshadowed in Scripture. I think I read from this before. It's also an interesting book. This one's I had this one, but I got the new edition. This is from American Vision. I got it from their website. This was Benjamin F. Morris's book. This was written about the same time, like 1800s maybe. I think this is, Gary DeMar. Yeah, he has a YouTube channel and stuff. Yeah, he updated this. The book is called The Christian Life and Character of the Civil Institutions of the United States. In the back it says, I opened a copy of The Christian Life and Character of the Civil Institutions of the United States in a debate I had with two ACLU attorneys, and told them, quote, until you respond to the contents of this book, you do not have a case against America's Christian heritage, end quote. And their response was silence. It's from Gary DeMar, president of the American Vision. It says the evidence presented in The Christian Life and Character makes it unmistakably clear that early American citizens and statesmen knew what Romans 13 and the Bible as a whole makes so clear, that civil government is not neutral among religions and philosophies, but instead is a ministry of the sovereign God who created and rules his universe and world and works out of his eternal plan with holy will and history. He says that our forefathers in the faith did not retreat from involvement in society and politics. They did not turn civil government, the making, enforcement, and education of laws over to Satan and those who serve him. They did not surrender the ministry of civil government to those who are in rebellion against God. Instead, they sought to base civil government and law upon the truth. Edwin Nisbet Moore. This one's Our Covenant Heritage. So the Covenanters struggle with unity in the church. So I think this is a very interesting book. I like the covenantal themes that it goes over in the history of the Scots and stuff like that. This one's a recent one that came out by Mark A. Knoll. It's a really thick book. It's called America's Book, The Rise and Decline of a Bible Civilization, 1794 through 1911. That's what it looks like. This is it goes over the history of the Bible and stuff, its influence. This is Mark Knoll's America's Book, recounts the public role of the Bible in the United States from the beginning of the Republic through the early 20th century. Knoll tells a complex and fascinating story with the measured judgments and penetrating insights, filled with fascinating details. This book is a work of both original research and impressive synthesis. Knoll is attuned to ironies and silences, but it also deeply respectful of the human struggle with both the scriptures and the culture. Reviewers may run out of superlatives. This is from George C. Revel, author of God's Almost Chosen People, A Religious History of the American Civil War. This is a quote. This is forward by Kurt Cameron. This is American Campfire Revival Edition. This one's The American Covenant, The Untold Story by Marshall Foster. This is this is as our national fabric unravels before a watching world, the unanswered question of the 21st century cries for a response. What happened to the America that once led the world by example? I said, to put it bluntly, we have forgotten the covenant that our founders made with our Creator. Its very meaning has been counseled by a secular elite at war with the truth. And so it says that the American Covenant, the Untold Story, documents in exciting and vivid detail the biblically based principles and personalities that formed the foundation of America's economic, governmental, legal, educational, and spiritual institutions. The brilliant strategy of our founders is contained in this volume and is providing hope for families and nations worldwide. Coming Crisis, Answering the Call from Sinna in a Time of Chaos by Dr. Miles R. Jones. This pretty good little book goes over the importance of the education system. This one I found. There's two books, but I'll show you the first one. This is book one, God's Covenant with America, from birth through the 19th century by Bill Hunter. what it looks like. This is our forefathers and our national leaders have referred to America as a Christian nation, but like a wayward child, we have turned away from our Father's visions. However, there is something within us that will never permit us to get away from our Father's dreams. Something within us reminds us of the call that God has on this nation. There is striving within us for more. We cannot get away from the influence of our fathers. Ultimately, our forefathers' vision will define our lives, or we will spend all our days running from it. Similar theme. This book is Call to the Falling Eagle by Richard A. Winglers. This is securing the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. And this is America, America, God shed His grace on thee and crowned thy good. This book, Call to the Falling Eagle, explores who Americans once were in terms of beliefs and values, who we have become in the past century, and how that has changed the course of our nation from a path of ascent to a path of descent. The primary agents that affected these changes are also described. Future prospects for our nation are next examined. If current trends and changing beliefs and values of Americans continue indefinitely, this modern experiment is failing our nation. Finally, Eagle explores paths to reverse the declining course of our nation. Calls Americans to seek paths of restoration and offers hope for that restoration. This one's is America falling apart? America's blessings are in danger of being lost. America's controversy with God's covenant. This one's by Perry Stone. I thought it was interesting, so I bought it. This is America has fallen victim to the snares that entrapped great superpowers of the past and is racing towards a breaking point. By forsaking the covenant made by our ancestors with the Almighty, we are beginning to see His hand of protection lifted and spiritual darkness descend. Will this trend continue? Will we follow in the footsteps of fallen empires such as Rome, or will we retrace our steps and return to God of our fathers? By Jeremy Newcomb. This is the book that made America, how the Bible formed our nation. And this is the Bible is the book that made America. All that is positive in our foundation can be traced back to the scriptures. Recently, it's written in like 2015, I think it was. It says recently, President Obama declared that America is not a Christian nation. While Newsweek announced the demise of Christian America, this book is the answer to America's critics with the facts of history. This one's America's Providential History, Mark Beliles and Stephen McDowell. It goes over discover useful principles for today. This is it can be used for homeschooling, private and public schools, church Sunday schools, political sermons, discussion groups, college seminary. Yeah, I think Vernon Hall, right? The other books that I was showing you from Vernon Hall. And she also has one on Christian education and stuff, and self-government and stuff like that. In this day and age where the education system is full of problems now, a bunch of indoctrination. So I guess Christians will want to learn how to self-govern and self-educate their kids, I guess. And that would be a very helpful book. This one's I was just reading from it in my previous video, Separation of Church and State, Philip Hamburger. This one's A Republic If You Can Keep It, America's Authentic Liberty, Confronts Contemporary Counterfeits. It just goes over God's principle of individuality, authentic created personhood and its unique identity versus counterfeit collectivism and multiculturalism. The Christian principle of self-government and Christian character. This is authentic individual authority and responsibility versus counterfeit government control and regulation. This is conscience is the most sacred of all property, or liberty of conscience. It's authentic individual stewardship of property versus counterfeit the welfare state. The welfare state's redistribution of property. Christian form of government and the principle of local self-government. Is authentic representative republic with limited civil government versus counterfeit expanding centralization of power. Christian principles of American political union. Authentic sovereignty of the nation state versus counterfeit subjection to international bodies. So I read from this one before. I like this one. The Founders in the Bible, Carl J. Richard. It goes over all the basic themes of what I'm talking about. People of the book, a lifelong passion, heroes and villains, divine intervention, the New Israel, religion, morality, and republicanism, other shared beliefs, differences, human nature and balanced government, church and state. This is from Daniel J. Alarza, Covenant and Commonwealth. From Christian Separation through the Protestant Reformation, the Covenant, Tradition, and Politics, Volume 2. Like I was saying, this is the same book from Alarza, Covenant and Polity and Biblical Israel, Biblical Foundations and Jewish Expressions. One I read from Forgotten Features of the Founding, The Recovery of Religious Themes in the Early American Republic by James Hudson. This one's God's Law and Government in America, 3 Historic Sermons by is edited by Joel McDermott. This one's 1726, The Year That Defined America by Eddie L. Hyatt. This is quote, when a nation goes down or a society perishes, one condition may always be found, that they forgot where they came from, that they lost sight of what had brought them along, end quote. This is Carl Sandburg. It says 1726 was the defining year for America. 1776 would never have happened apart from 1726. The Great Awakening that began that year transformed colonial America and laid out the spiritual, moral, and philosophical foundations for the beginning of a great nation. It also unleashed the anti-slavery sentiments and moral outrage that eventually brought about the end of slavery in America. This is the story of America that has been censored from modern textbooks. It is the story of the faith and spiritual vision of those who brought this nation into existence. This one's One Nation Under God, 10 Things Every Christian Should Know About the Founding of America. It's Dr. David C. Gibbs, Jr., with Jerry Newcomb. It's like a short little book on the One Nation Under God. And it says, is America still one nation under God? Our modern courts seem to say no, as do the secular media and public schools. But what do the facts of history say? Here are 10 incontrovertible, heavily documented and politically incorrect historical facts that prove that Christianity played a pivotal role in uniquely shaping the most free and prosperous and powerful nation in history. This one's same author, David Gibbs Jr. and David Gibbs III. It's called Understanding the Constitution, 10 Things Every Christian Should Know About the Supreme Law of the Land. Has the Bible in the back. This one's Building Godly Nations, Lessons from the Bible and America's Christian History by Stephen K. McDowell. Has this cover. This is Jesus commissioned believers to, quote, make disciples of all nations, end quote, which according to the Bible commentator, says Matthew Henry, that means to, quote, do your utmost to make the nations Christian nations, end quote. How do we make the nations Christian? How do we build godly nations? And then it goes over all these other topics that it goes over, these chapters, like fulfilling the cultural mandate, how Christians have helped establish God's kingdom in the nations, God's sovereignty over nations, the Bible, rock of our republic. That's what I'm saying. The Bible is like technically our Republican book, or at least it's one of the major documents of our republic. This is from W. Cleon Skousen. It's Coming to America, The Majesty of God's Law. It's a nice cover. Just says the book is a study of the history and development of the only system of law which was revealed by God Himself. He prophesied it would be established forever at the second coming of Christ. That is why it is called, quote, "It's coming to America, the majesty of God's law," quote. So the psalmist described the supreme excellence of God's law when he said, quote, "The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes," end quote. Psalms 119, 7-8. This one's pretty good. It traces the, there were religious liberty. Kind of goes against the secular interpretation, right? It kind of goes over the Christian interpretation of that. Sorry, I'm tired a little bit. This book's from Michael Ferris, From Tyndale to Madison: How the Death of an English Martyr Led to the American Bill of Rights. It says that it tore the force of extraordinary and unusual importance. Only rarely does a book possess the significance of From Tyndale to Madison. Michael Ferris meticulously and successfully debunks the myths that the Enlightenment is responsible for the American Bill of Rights, and that the Enlightenment philosophies were chiefly responsible for opening people's minds to the error of religious persecution and paving the way for a society in which heretics are not tortured and burned in town squares. It's a must read for anyone interested in liberty. It's from Charles W. Dunn. This one's Never Before in History: America's Inspired Birth. It's by Gary Amos and Richard Gardner and William Dembski. That's how it looks. And this one's The Miracle of America: The Influence of the Bible on the Founding History and Principles of the United States of America for a People of Every Belief. Angela E. Kamrath. This is a pretty wide book. Studies show that America today are largely ignorant about the principles and ideas that have shaped our nation. As a result, we have become more fragmented as a nation and unclear and divided about what our nation stands for and where it is headed, or where it should be heading. Without citizens learning of America's positive founding principles and values, the American idea is rapidly weakening. It goes over other stuff, but let's move on. This one's America, the Covenant Nation: A Christian Perspective. This is the first volume from America's foundations in the early 1600s to the Great Depression of the 1930s by Miles Huntley Hodges. This is it's a 2-volume book, but I have this one. It just says this particular volume begins with the period of the early 1600s when 2 very different English societies were established in the New World, one in Virginia and one in New England. The Virginia Society simply recreated the rigidly class-based feudal society of the times. The New England Society was the most unusual democracy of social equals, covenanted to live under God's, not man's, personal rule. These 2 American social types would find themselves in rather constant struggle, as America's found keeping covenant with God to be very difficult because of man's natural tendency to want to control life, including the lives of others. This volume goes over the American narrative through the rising age of reason, the late 1600s, to the Christian Great Awakening of the mid-1700s, the War of Independence, the founding of the new American Republic, Second Great Awakening, the spread west of American society, the mounting tensions over the slavery issue, a civil war, post-war Reconstruction, the Industrial Revolution, the age of imperialism, World War I, the Roaring Twenties, and finally the Great Depression. This is with the latter's role in toughening up in American society prior to its call to new global responsibilities. So this study goes deep in the matters not only of the dynamics of social power, but also of the cultural, spiritual character of American society and its leaders during these deeply challenging time periods and events. This one's Proclaim Liberty Throughout the Land: The Hebrew Bible in the United States, a Source Book. I read from this one a little bit. The Politics Reformed, The Anglo-American Legacy of Covenant Theology by Glenn A. Moots. American Zion, The Old Testament as a Political Text from the Revolution to the Civil War by Aaron Chalev. That's what it looks like in the cover. So, The Roots of the American Republic by Reverend E.C. Wines. This goes over the true origins of the American Republic have been largely forgotten, obscured, or denied. It is essential now that we recognize and reclaim our heritage. That is why this book, originally titled Commentaries on the Laws of the Ancient Hebrews, 1853, then republished as The Hebrew Republic, 1980, and now as, quote, The Roots of the American Republic, is so important. It is the grand theme of this work by Reverend E.C. Wines that the origin of the American Republic lies ultimately in the laws of Moses and thus in divine wisdom based on the eternal biblical principles of truth, justice, and the sovereignty of God. And the Reverend Wines demonstrates conclusively that the roots of the American Republic do not stem from the so-called glories that were Greece or the fleeting grandeur that was Rome. So the roots of this nation were planted at Mount Sinai. Further, the brilliance of the Republic did not evolve from the gods of Mount Olympus or the philosophies of Rome. The rudimental source of the light was the Holy Bible, the written word of the living God. This one, The Founders on God and Government, forwarded by Michael Novak, edited by Daniel Dresbach, Mark D. Hall, and Jeffrey Morrison. She goes over different topics. They were like different essays and stuff. It's like Religion and the Common Good, George Washington on Church and State, by Vincent Philip Munoz, and One Public Religion, Many Private Religions, John Adams and the 1780 Massachusetts Constitution. John Witt Jr. has different other people's essays in here, from Thomas E. Buckley, Garrett Ward Shildon, Jeffrey H. Morrison, Howard L. Lubert, and Mark D. Hall. There's other ones from James R. Stoner, Daniel L. Dresbach, and so forth. This one is God Done with America by Rabbi Eric Carlson, forward by Sid Roth of Messianic Vision. They've Crossed the Line. This is A Patriot's Guide to Religious Freedom, Stephen Bloom and Carrie O'Bailey. This is What Are Our Legal Rights as Christian Citizens in a Post-Christian America. Too many Christians in America are being intimidated into silence and inaction. So this goes over the intolerance of the secularist and secularism, right? Like, let me see. This is it says remove your shirt, clothing, words, and symbols of faith. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is prayer-free zones. Prayer in the classroom, locker room, on the playground. Chapter 3, you can't have that book in here. Bibles and Bible clubs. Chapter 4, excuse me, you want my child to write about what? Assignments versus conscience. Chapter 5, shush children, no talking about God. Witnessing at school. Chapter 6, we don't tolerate intolerance, diversity training, and forced indoctrination. Chapter 7, do your religious stuff on your own time. Private employers and employees. Chapter 8, keep your church out of our state. Government employees. This is chapter 9. This conversation is off limits. Witnessing at work. Chapter 10, put that cross away. Religious expression in your office, locker, truck. And everywhere else. Chapter 11, you want to do what at that park? Public property and facilities. Chapter 12, tear down those commandments, displays and monuments. Chapter 13, no ministry in our backyard. Zoning and land use. Chapter 14, the tyranny of the sensitive, holiday displays. And the last one, chapter 15, is to shut up. Abortion protests and pro-life voices of silent victims. This one's another one that does the same thing, but basically defends against the secularist interpretation on Thomas Jefferson. Like I read from this one, I enjoyed it. Doubting Thomas: The Religious Life and Legacy of Thomas Jefferson by Mark A. Belez and Jeffrey Newcomb. This one's Miracles of the American Revolution, Divine Intervention and the Birth of the Republic by Larkin Spivey. And this is the cover. I like these books because they account for what I'm saying, the providential hand on the country and things like that. This provocative account of the American Revolution offers historical evidence that the hand of God was at work during the pivotal era of American founding, and was the birth of the Republic an accident of history or part of the divine plan? Is it possible for a providential hand intervene at critical junctures during the American Revolution? Well, obviously George Washington and all of them say, that it is so, right? And that obviously right. That's what I'm saying. That would be what I call the orthodoxy of the American covenantal understanding, or the new covenant understanding of the country. That it is more faithful to the country's founding to believe in divine providence of God. As Washington said, the same wonder-working deity, right? Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, the God of Christ, right, is the one who established this country. And so anyway, I read from this one a little bit. It's from Timothy Ballard, The Covenant, Lincoln and the War. So that's the covenantal understanding, and then Lincoln's role as well. And this is another one from the same author, Timothy Ballard, The Covenant of One Nation Under God, America's Sacred and Immutable Connection to Ancient Israel. Of course, I grounded in the faith of Abraham, which is the most important thing. Not so much like this author does. He kind of tries to tie it into like lost tribes, like actual like race or something, right? Like according to the flesh. But it is more according to the seed of faith. That is the whole point. It would be Abraham's seed of faith. Michael Medved, The American Miracle, Divine Providence in the Rise of the Republic. This is Michael Medved's wonderful new book. Makes a compelling case for two beliefs that many of us hold dear: that God's hand is in history, and that America is a divinely favored country. Given the dark mood of the moment, The American Miracle could not be more timely. By Joseph I. Lieberman. This is a book cover. Of course, I make the distinction when it comes to America, right? Like, I'm talking about the New Covenant America, the one that is rooted in the New Covenant reality and understanding, and that interpretation, right? That is faithful to that understanding of this country. Not the America, the liberal progressivism, right? With imperialism, trying to get away from the new covenantal understanding of itself, and wants to be like everyone else. Like these progressives want you to be like everyone else, like New Zealand or something like that. It's retarded. I said, be faithful to God in His covenantal understanding. I said that Christ, basically I look at it this way, that Christ is to be the desire of all the nations, and so you want to be favoring that interpretation of yourself, which I argue is the only reality. That the new covenant reality is the only reality of this entire existence. And so no, I don't favor godlessness or godless interpretations of reality, and neither for this country. That's why I make these videos, to kind of give you some references and books, so that you can combat that idea, because it's a stupid idea to say that we're a godless nation and to interpret separation under the secular religious themes or whatever the hell secularism is, because secularism is not true religion. It said that this one's continuing the biblical roots of American constitutionalism. This is from, quote, I am the Lord, and quote, to, quote, we the people, by Joseph Livany. This is according to the covenantal wisdom, conventional wisdom, I mean. As according to the conventional wisdom, American constitutional democracy stemmed from Athenian democracy, Roman law, English legal practices, and the Magna Carta. This book agrees that democracy was born in Athens. However, as the title suggests, the thesis of this book claims that constitutionalism, in the sense of an agreed text sanctioning procedures of legislation, government, and power flow, germinated in pre-state Israel, better known as Israel of the Judges. This concept is new. The book is not intended to shake your understanding of the Constitution. However, it will answer your questions you might have asked, or even questions you never asked. So it's a pretty interesting book. This one's The Jefferson Lies from David Martin. This one was exposing the myths you've always believed about Thomas Jefferson, right? Like that he was this, basically like some of them try to make him out to be like an antichrist or a secularist or a deist or something. This is discovering the truth about Thomas Jefferson. Didn't Thomas Jefferson father the child of a slave girl? Wasn't he an anti-Christian secularist who rewrote the Bible to his liking? Doesn't the evidence prove he was just another racist, bigoted colonial? Actually, no. And so this is it. America has forgotten its roots, its purpose, its identity. In response to a protracted campaign to discredit Barton's scholarship and credibility, historian David Barton offers a more thorough take on reclaiming one's beloved founding father, Thomas Jefferson. In the updated paperback edition of Jefferson Lies, a lengthy new preface confirms Barton's scholarship and credibility and answers to critics as he sets out to once again correct the distorted image of Jefferson. Says Barton repaints a picture of the man from Monticello as a visionary and innovator, a man who revered Jesus, a classical Renaissance man, and a man whose pioneering stand for liberty and God-given inalienable rights fostered a better world for this nation and its posterity. For America, the time to remember these truths again is now. So it's a pretty good book. It's just like Doubting Thomas by that book. That book, Doubting Thomas by Newcomb. So the best way that I interpreted Jefferson, based on the books that I've been reading, is that basically he was like libertarian Christian who was basically favored separation for the benefit of true religion and was a fostering, a nursing father to the church, but to all churches, right? Not just to one, which is the whole point of this establishment, so that the state can be charitable to all the churches, not just the established one. And that's basically in summation how I see Jefferson, how I interpret him. Not as this anti-Christian because he had these personal beliefs which he kept in private, which means it is not to be imposed on the Declaration or on the Christian religion, his personal beliefs about Jesus, or like the so-called deist God that he believes in, even though Jesus is very much part of his religion, a big part of his religion, right? Thomas Jefferson. It's not proof to use his private correspondence and say that his personal beliefs should be imposed on others, right? Which is not what he favored. There's no point of, right, sacred rights of conscience. But the question, right, that I asked in my other videos, it's not that I'm trying to prove them all to be traditional Christians, but I was trying to answer the question of what is true religion and what is that the life of the Republic, right? If it is true religion, what religion is it? Because they said true religion was the life of the Republic, and argue that it presupposes the Christian religion, but true Christian religion, which is in its purest form, the religion of Jesus, the Word of God, which is what the founders venerated. And so the life of the Republic is the Christian religion, and the other way to say it is the New Covenant religion, right? That is a Christian nation in the sense that it is grounded in the New Covenant, their reality, identity, and purpose, and that is the New Covenant of Christ. And there's only one Christ, one New Covenant, but there's many Christians, and that's how I interpret the Christian nation, right? The Christian heritage, the New Covenant heritage. I just basically take out the Christian word and replace it with New Covenant, because that is more central to Christ, because that's what it's really about, his gospel, right? His God, his law, his religion, basically. It's not really about Christian religion, and there are many different interpretations of Christ's teachings and stuff. Continuing. Forged in Faith by Rod Cragg. How Faith Shaped the Birth of the Nations, 1607 through 1776. So I like all these books that favor the providence, right? That account for God, right? This one as well. I think it's the same author, Rod Cragg. This is By the Hand of Providence, How Faith Shaped the American Revolution. This one's by Jaroslav Pelikan, Interpreting the Bible and the Constitution. A nice little short book. Says, quote, "This book is the work of a seasoned scholar. It draws on a wide literature, both the religious and which Pelican has worked all his life, and the legal, which he uses deftly. The author substantiates his points with force, clarity, and thoroughness," end quote. This is from Judge John T. Noonan. Says, this is from Perry Miller. It's a pretty old book. It's called Nature's Nation. This one's Leviticus versus Leviathan, Choosing Our Sovereign by Wayne B. Holstad. Just says, for those of us who spend our days groping as best we are able through the tangled, murky wood known as, quote, constitutional law, end quote. Wayne Holstad is a welcome guide who shows us how we came to be lost and how we can again begin to find our way home. The scope of this book is vast, while his basic thesis and that we Americans have forgotten that the principles of liberty are built on the principles of Christianity is not necessarily original. Holstad's application of that thesis will be viewed as original, perhaps even controversial, to those used to the familiar conservative jeremiads about the baleful effects of secularism's triumph. How many Christians ever think about the relationship between the biblically based principles of equality and inalienable rights to the field of economics? Holstad's application of Christian and common law principles to the areas of monopoly, antitrust, and economics in general is a long overdue corrective to the nearly complete silence of Christians on this obvious fundamental aspect of life. On abortion, familiarity with the issue has dulled us to the enormity of the damage wrought by the Supreme Court by its utter abandonment of any pretense of constitutional principle in 1973. While we lamely pat ourselves on the back for banning partial birth infanticide, one of the practices which was near the bottom of the slippery slope just 15 years ago, and anxiously await the thumbs up or down on our efforts from the 9 wizards of Washington, Holstad reminds us that the principles, if one may call them that, underlying Roe v. Wade spelled the death of not only millions of innocent victims, but also very civilizations with apathetically acquiescence in a tyrannical imposed culture of lawlessness and rebellion and despair. This book ought to be required reading for all law students, lawyers, judges, especially judges, and anyone else who wonders how we got into the mess we're in and how we might get out. As Holstad concludes, America must once again choose its sovereign if it is ever to live out its providential destiny as a symbol not of economic or military power or individual autonomy, but of, quote, the blessings of liberty. Which liberty comes from God. That's where providence, liberty, protection, right, prosperity is in God. That's how our republic came into existence. The aid of God, basically. This one's America the Beautiful, Our Vanishing Heritage, Why Our Hallowed Faith Matters. This is America is a nation among the nations, strictly founded on faith. The role of Christianity is developing a civilization and culture deeply rooted and intrinsically intertwined with the Christian faith and doctrines is unquestionable. The Bible is for the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. John Wycliffe. America was not born on one day. At the appointed time, God conceived her and delivered her with much labor pain to the founding fathers, but with a repentant people we shall be born anew instantly. America's heritage and history are not for sale, nor to be rewritten by generations who do not know the history, nor interested in preserving history. We are exclusive in heritage, culture, and civilization, rooted and built in Christ. But we are inclusive of all, the rich and the poor, the weak and the strong, the multi-ethnic heritage of the land. Poor in the nation are the responsibility of the rich and the state. In America the Beautiful, Our Vanishing Heritage, Dr. Cherian concludes, quote, America is the lit candle set in the west, A lighthouse for the world when deep darkness covers and fear grips us. End quote. Let not vanishing faith and dishonesty destroy America. Yeah, because our salvation is in Christ, not in politics and stuff. Yeah, this one, I haven't read it yet, but I've found it interesting, right? This one's Anthony D. Smith. Yeah, did I show you the cover of this one? That's what it looked like. So if you find these books interesting, you can pick them up. And this one is, this one's Chosen People, Sacred Sources of National Identity. Let me see, it says here, I haven't read it yet, but I thought the idea was interesting. It says, the book was interesting. It says, or it looked interesting. It says, until thy seed I have given this land. From the moment of God's covenant with Abraham in the Old Testament, the idea that a people are chosen by God has had a central role in shaping national identity. This is kind of what I'm saying, like when I think of the Christian Roman Empire with Constantine and all that, I think when the way the church sees itself, right, as the church, but they're also the church of the empire. I said that that whole vision, right? How, because I'm talking about the interpretation, right? Like secularists think that the Roman Empire invented Christianity, which is ridiculous because they were persecuting Christians before Christianity took over. And then the Protestants think that the Rome paganized Christianity, when no, actually Christianity Christianized all that. And I really believe it has a lot to do with what I'm trying to do for America. It's what Constantine did for his Roman Empire. Is about national identity, like how you see yourself, right? Like you have this new empire that is rooted in pagan culture, right? But now it has this church at the center, rooted in the apostles. And so you have these two realities coming together, right? And so you would have to have a unique vision and interpretation, which is where I think Constantine comes in, right? How God established him, and Nicaea, foundation of patristic thought, which is why, when I make these videos about the hypostatic union, I'm not trying to attack the church. I'm trying to set it free, that maybe the words are correct of the creed, but just not the interpretation, right, of those words. And so I'm trying to say that the new Christian empire, the church of the empire, right, it's essential to its survival, its identity. How you see yourself is how you survive, right, in the world as a nation. And so that's why it's essential for the Christian, because you appeal to your founding, but that is the essence of the reality, right? That's how you appeal to it, to God. You can say God established it, right? How he's very active, not just in America, but even then, right? How it just takes over the whole empire, right? And so I just think it has a lot more to do with kind of what this book is saying. It's about mainly a national identity. This is Chosen People argues powerfully that sacred beliefs remain central to national identity, even in the increasingly secular, globalized modern world. In this important new study, Anthony D. Smith goes in search of the deep Judeo-Christian roots of the many manifestations of national identity. This rich and timely contribution to current debates from nationalism explains the complex historical reasons behind often violent modern conflicts around issues of land, culture, religion, and politics, tracing the development of individual nations over many centuries. It offers fascinating insights into the religious and cultural foundations of countries such as Great Britain, the United States, Israel, France, and Germany. The argument draws on a wide range of examples from historic landscapes in Ireland, Switzerland, Egypt, myths of Arthurian Britain, Holy Russia, and Byzantium, through memories of a, quote, golden age, end quote, to the modern commemoration of the glorious dead and of victims of war. So I think it's very good books, what it looks like. As Moses, the Ten Commandments there. Then this last one is Reading the Bible with the Founding Fathers by Daniel L. Dresbach. Just goes over how they used the Bible, that it was, personally it's more than just political talk, it has to do with the social order, its reality, its own identity, like I told you. And it's just It's like because I do see the Bible as like the American Republican book, and the source for it's like the main foundational source um, for its social order and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, there were other books, but I think this would be sufficient, right, to kind of get you interested in what I'm saying. That the only way you'll survive is appealing to God, like our founders told you. Appeal to heaven, the God of heaven, the God of Christ. And it's not that hell overcome the Christian people. The Christian people are their own worst enemies, right? Because you have God, right? You have God that will help you overcome all this. So that's what I say. It's like what America's going through. I mean, it's kind of like the judgment, right? But it is. I guess you say it's for our own good, right? Because of all the wickedness this country is doing. And you said you can't be your own light. Like I said to the church, you can't be your own light. You have to be the light of God. So repentance and humility is always required. Same thing for this country. And so hopefully you like all these books or you found some interesting and such. I'm sorry, I'm kind of sleepy. I'm trying not to slur my words. But if you like my videos, please like and subscribe. Thank you and God bless.